Hi everyone, welcome to Bookish Love with Krystal. Today I have with me upcoming indie author Jaida Lorelle. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. So we're just going to jump right on into this, and I want to start off by asking, what made you get into the author life?
So I've always had a love and appreciation for reading since, oh gosh, as far as I can remember. Um, Anytime growing up, if you'd seen me, I would have a book in my hands. And it was always one of my favorite ways to escape from what was going on in life, too. And I started to get into writing late middle school, early high school, and in high school, it kind of just took off for me. And as I feel like most authors do, I got started on Wattpad with a lot of fanfics and writing fan fiction, and eventually started kind of delving into my own books that I wanted to write. But just recently started really getting serious about it and was like, you know what? It's always been one of my dreams to publish something. So why not start now?
That's awesome. I mean, and so, okay, side note for those listening, Jada and I actually know each other personally. We met through Paul Mitchell. So I've followed her on TikTok for the longest time, and she was doing stuff for Akatar on her TikTok originally. And she's the one that got me into reading the series and got me dipping my toes back into reading. So there's that. Um, but so you're writing your own first novel, and want to give us a little bit of detail about what the background story is, or like kind of like what direction you're looking at going into?
Yeah, so I'm kind of marketing it more as like it's definitely a fiction book. It's contemporary romance, but at the same time, I'm trying to say that it's not 100% romance because it weighs heavily on sexual assault and also domestic violence. And I just want to put a PSA out there. I am in no way romanticizing that because I know that that can be very triggering for some people. But it's one of those things where it means a lot to me because when I was 15, I was actually sexually assaulted. So I took a lot of like my own things that I went through and that situation that I went through, it was an entire year that I was in that relationship and really just felt like I wanted to put pen to the paper and wanted to create this character that um, goes through a very similar situation. Her name is Ava, and she goes through a very similar situation, but instead she's a freshman in college, so she's a little bit older. And I just wanted to, create a character that goes through that, but really focus on the changes that happen with a person when they go through something like that, the physical changes that happen, the social changes that happen, but also the aftermath of that and the growth that can come from it too,
Mhm.
and the strength that can come from it. So, a lot of that is going to be focused on in the book. I'm really excited because with Ava, starting off with the book, she's very bubbly. So, you'll see her like going to college parties and hanging out with her friends and also going to like a football game. But then you'll start to notice as she gets into this relationship that her personality starts to change and who she is as a person changes. But I'm just so excited about this. It's been on my mind for probably like 2 or 3 years now. Even the title of the book, like I remember 2020, I actually have it in my notes app on my phone. I wrote down the title, had no idea what it was going to be about yet, but I just knew like deep down before you knew me was the title. Like
Oh,
that was going to be it for the book.
well, that's awesome. See, that's what I like to hear because I did not do well with picking my titles first. I kind of I wrote the stories and then picked the titles. But I like the fact that you already had your title in mind because not a lot of people that start writing have a title in mind when they jump in.
Yeah.
Um, so how long have you been writing this story for? Has it been like a couple months or a couple weeks? Like how?
Yeah. Yeah, so I started writing the book, I want to say back in November of 2023. And at that point, it was just like some rough drafts, some ideas that I was just kind of putting on the paper. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to start this yet, but this is kind of where I want it to go. And since then, like I've been writing, I think I have about 10 chapters so far. Um,
Nice.
yeah, so I've been writing pretty consistently every week. I try to make sure that I sit down and at least get a few chapters done. each week, but I have ADHD too, so it's also it's a challenge getting myself to sit there for a few hours and focus.
Oh no, so okay, so now that you bring that up, that is one question I have for you is how does writing with ADHD, like, how does it affect your flow? Like, do you find yourself finding issues when you're writing? Like, oh crap, I'm done. You get up and then you like forget about it, or like, do you have issues like that?
So I do have some moments like that. I have to make sure that like the rest of the house is quiet around me. And what I notice helps is like creating a playlist for what I'm writing about. So I'll just turn on music that like really focuses on like a certain emotion that I'm wanting to bring in that chapter or like a certain situation that I'm focusing on. And I feel like it kind of helps me to kind of just level down with everything. um, but I also have moments too where my ADHD is like, I'm in the middle of typing up a chapter and my brain is like, ooh, this would be a great idea too. And we should also add this. So I'm like pulling up a notes app and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to jot this idea down for later.
Yeah, and honestly, that's smart. Like the smartest thing you could do is I have a notepad, and everybody's like, "Oh, why do you carry that with you everywhere you go?" And I'm like, because this I may not be diagnosed ADHD, but I have tendencies, and I'm like, I have
Yeah.
5 books that I'm writing at a time right now, and each one of them are different characters. And I tell everybody, and I talk about this often, that characters take over the brain. They argue and they fight their way out and they want to be written. And when they want to be written, they want to be written now. If not, they're going to hijack your other stories until you write them.
Yep.
And that's the best way to describe it. And like as like I have everything here. Like this is my notebook. It's a spiral bound notebook with like 3 different sections. And I recommend this for everybody. Like when I was going through a writer's block, I went and did my main character. I decorated the page and I put like her favorites, her dislikes, and like
Yep.
everything that I could think of in terms of what would people want to know about her. But that's just a way that I cope with my stuff.
Yeah.
So, do you have like an idea of how you want your cover to look already, or is that still something like you're a ways away from deciding how you want it to look?
I have some ideas. Um, it's just a matter of actually starting to put things together. But I can't decide if I want like more of a cartoon type cover. Like I don't think I want people on my cover. I think
Yeah.
it's more so I think I more so want it to be the title and then have some sort of like artwork behind it too that ties along with the story. Um, I was really inspired by the book Speak growing up. I actually read that in high school around the time that I went through what I went through freshman year. If you've never read Speak before, highly recommend reading it. It's such a good read. It's very inspiring. But the cover of that is really inspirational to me too. There's like a tree on the front of it, which has to do with something that happens in the story. So I kind of want to pull some elements from my book and maybe have them in the artwork on the front cover.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Um, so do you have like a word goal or like a chapter goal on this, or is it just like you're writing until you feel like it's done?
I think I'm more so writing until I feel like it's done because I feel like I have a lot to say. And I feel like Ava has a lot to say too. So um, I'll write until it's done. But my goal is to have probably around 350 pages. I feel like that will be like a solid book. I don't want to make it too long.
Hmm.
Um, but I'm also considering writing a second book for this as well as like a follow up to it. So I definitely want to leave some room to have that second book.
No, that was actually going to be my next question for you was if do you see this possibly becoming like a small series for you? If like you do have a lot to say, do you see it building up just in one book, or do you want to see it build up over a few?
Yeah, I definitely want to see it build up at least with like two.
Hmm.
Um, because right now the main focus for Before You Knew Me is Ava's story, where it's going to be, I don't want to give too much away and spoil it, but right now it's going to be then, and then there's going to be a portion of the book that's now, so present day.
Oh, I like that.
So it's yeah. So it's gonna be focusing on, the past. So we're gonna be going through, of course, her freshman year of college, but then I wanna jump to the future and show like where she is now, present day, as an older adult. Once she's finally gone through everything and really started to learn who she is as a person.
Mhm.
Um, so I want to follow up with the second book and show like her relationships after that and like the friendships that she has after that and the life she has after that. But I don't think I'm going to be able to do it all in one book, which is why I'm thinking a second book would be helpful.
I think that honestly sounds great, jumping around like that. I think that would be perfect because 'cause it'll give everybody, like, the backstory and then okay, this is the growth from it, and I feel
Mhm.
like with you putting that in 2 different books, I feel like that would be a nice solidifier of it all.
Yeah.
Now,
Yep.
shifting gears a little bit, I saw that you're doing some promotion on TikTok already, or it's more Instagram, right? For your stuff?
So it's a combination of both. TikTok, I know I have a little bit of a bigger following on, and I feel like it's kind of easier to make videos than make posts. So I
Yeah.
prefer to use TikTok. So yeah, recently I've been posting some stuff on TikTok. I have a few more that I need to post here soon, promoting more of it. But I've been posting sneak peeks of things from the story, little snippets. I recently teamed up with Jillian Yetter, the
Mhm.
audiobook narrator, and she did a snippet of Before You Knew Me as well. So it was really cool hearing the characters brought to life. She does an awesome job of narrating. And it's so funny too, because I actually knew her when I was in high school. She was actually my English teacher my freshman year of high school
Oh,
and
wow.
junior year. Yeah. So it was crazy hearing her like read one of my stories instead of just hearing like someone else's book.
Uh,
So
that's awesome.
yeah,
Like, that's lucky that you have that kind of, like, reach like that, and that's awesome that she's doing that. Like,
yeah,
wow.
yep.
Um, yeah, because about to say, I saw the snippet, and I was like I think I texted you, and it was like, "I'm so proud of you, I'm so happy." I was so excited, and I'm one of those people that, like, I try to, like, share everything from everyone that
Mhm.
I adore, people that I'm like, "Yes, I need this person to be, like, up here, like, come on, be up here with me, let's do this." And you're honestly such an amazing person that I want the world to see you. I want the world to hear your stories. And honestly, I mean, get to know you. I mean, you're like I said, you're an amazing person, and girl, you can sing. Now, do you see yourself writing more than just these 2 books in the future? Do you feel yourself going more of like a fantasy style or
Yeah, so it's funny that you ask because I do also have a fantasy work in progress. It's
Ooh.
been I put it on the back burner for a little bit because I've really been wanting to focus on Before You Knew Me. The fantasy book does not have a title right now because I'm really bad with titles for fantasy books. Um, but I already have the characters planned out for that. I actually wrote a few chapters that are kind of just rough drafts. But I'm so excited once I finish Before You Knew Me because I'm immediately going to dive back into the fantasy world.
Oh, I can't wait to see what your brain can come up for fantasy.
Yeah.
So okay, I know you said you were comfortable talking about some like up and coming books that are coming out. Are you looking forward to the new Crescent City book? I just need to ask because you're the one
Um,
that dove me into the mass universe.
yes,
So
I can't wait. I just saw, I don't know if you saw it, but Sarah J. Maas just posted yesterday that chapter one is up on her website.
I
So
yeah.
I went there so fast on my lunch break. I was reading it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is awesome.
Yeah, I got through part of the prologue and I was just like, "Oh, do I want to I need to be writing. I can't. Oh, this is not good. I'm going to be distracted." I I don't know if you read the Bonds That Tie series, but when I hit my writing block, like I said, not really writing block, but more of a book series, like I just was clashing. All my characters were just a mess and I lost a character for like 6 chapters, didn't know where I put them. It was rough. But I stopped and I read that. and I feel like you would absolutely adore it. It is
Yeah.
a fantasy base. It's a girl, and she's got 5 bonds that she wants nothing to do with. And they don't understand why, they all know that they're bonds, but they're just like, "Oh, well, I don't know how I feel about this." And it's like a big arc that it's a finished series, so you don't have to worry about anything coming out later. But I would definitely recommend taking a look at that.
Yeah. I think if I'm remembering correctly, I think it's actually on my TBR. I just haven't, like, made my way to it yet because I keep adding books to that list.
Mhm. Same. But
Yep.
if it's on your list, I definitely recommend you reading it. I mean, the first book's like 250 pages, and every book after that's like 530. And I got it done in a week and a half, and I know you read faster than I do, so you'll probably have it done in like a couple days.
Okay. Good
But
to know.
so coming back over to your stuff, um, what trying to think. Like I had a question and then it just poofed out. Jeez, this is horrible. We all know how my brain works. It just it's scattered a lot of the times. But so with the character names, did you pick these out of names that you liked? Did you pick them for like a symbolic, or was it just kind of something that just stuck with you?
That's a good question. So a couple of them have a symbolic meaning. Ava's name specifically has a symbolic meaning as well. But when I was brainstorming, I just wanted to give the characters some like young, fun names. Because all of them are college students. So I didn't want to give them anything too crazy. And I know since it's more contemporary, I also had to kind of rein it back a little bit with wanting to give them like more fantasy kind of names.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I always loved the name Ava. Like even growing up, there was one point in my life where I was like, I wish my name was Ava, because I never liked the name Jada for a while, um, until it grew on me. But it was just, it was funny because growing up, Ava was always a name that was like in my head. So I think it just felt right giving the main character that name.
Oh, that's awesome.
Um, yeah, but everyone else in the story, they all have pretty like easy names. Nathan is the main guy character. Nathan Moore, he is a quarterback on the football team at Crestmore, which is the college they go to.
Nice.
Um, and then Carmen, she's one of the other main characters as well. And then you have Sophie, who is Ava's best friend.
Nice.
So you get to see those characters a lot in the book. And then there is one character that comes into play later on in the story. I
Mhm.
don't want to give anything away about him, but he's another love interest that eventually makes an appearance.
Ooh, I like that.
Mhm.
Um, so when you're writing, do you find yourself giving them a voice in your head of how you want them to sound? Or are you just like just writing? Because I know some people I've spoken with said they don't see the movies in their heads when they read, or they don't see the movie in their head as they're writing it. Are you one of those people that sees the movie, or you're just one of those people that see the black and white?
I'm definitely one of those people that sees the movie. Like when I'm writing these characters, I'm listening to them having the conversation. And I also pull from like a lot of inspiration from my life. So like a lot of the characters that are in the book are inspired by like people I've known.
Hmm.
So Sophie, Ava's best friend, is heavily inspired by the friends I have now. So the conversations that they have, some of the funny things that Sophie says are like things that have been said to me or I've said to my friends. So the characters are definitely inspired by like people I've known that I hold close to me.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, do you Now, I've always meant to ask this when it comes to when people write stuff that is slightly inspired off of their life. Do you worry about how certain people are going to react to the book?
It's been a thought in my mind. Um, but because it's been, oh gosh, like 12 or 13 years since it happened, and because I'm changing a lot of things too,
Hmm.
I would hope people aren't upset. But if they're upset, that's not really my problem.
That's
That's
more of a
more,
their problem.
yeah, that's more of a their problem.
Mhm.
Um, I remember like back when things happened for me at the time, it was like one of those things where it was very taboo to talk about. And I feel like since we've had like the Me Too movement and a bunch of other things where like it's become normalized to talk about sexual assault and domestic violence,
Mhm.
um, I feel more inspired and empowered to talk about it in my story and to be like, look, this actually does happen on a day
Yeah.
to day basis. And I feel like oftentimes when it's brought up, we only ever hear about, like what happened in that moment. We
Mhm.
never get to hear about what happens after and the growth that happens for those survivors and the lives that they create for themselves after that happens.
Yeah.
So I really want to be able to focus on that and show that like good things can happen after that, that it's not always, oh, well, that person's a victim and they're never going to be happy in life.
Yeah. No, no, I'm glad you're doing that. Like I really am glad that you're kind of giving a voice to I hate to say kind of a voice to the voiceless because there's people that are still skeptical to talk about stuff like that. They're worried
Mhm.
about, what people will think, any backlash, or then, and the other part that I hate about it when you read about this because I mean, I did the true crime podcast for a while and there was a lot of if it's a big profile case, the media has a tendency to always blame the woman for, oh, well, what was she wearing?
Mhm.
Are you sure she didn't want, and like that kind of talk is detrimental to someone's mental health. Just,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't think that that's right. And most people don't talk about it afterwards. It's kind of like, okay, bottle it up. Let's hide it because I don't want people to, judge. So
Yeah.
I love the fact that you're coming out and being like, "No, look, there's a whole life afterwards." And that yeah,
Mhm.
that may not be the case for everybody, but it's the case for you and probably many others out there. And that's really great that you're doing that. Like, I love that for you.
Mhm. Yep.
Um, so moving on into just the workings of your brain. Uh so who would you say is heavily inspiring you to like write? Is there one author that's just like this person is giving me my passion, it's who I want to be like or who I admire?
Um, that's tough. I have a couple authors I'm thinking of. So one is definitely Sarah J. Maas. And I think she really inspired me because with her books, I don't know if you would notice this at all, but she actually did reference sexual assault in her book.
Mhm.
And I loved the way that she did it too, because the way that she worded things and the way that she kind of shared it through character experience, it was one of those things that like really resonated with me because I was like, oh my gosh, like I had some of these same thoughts. Like when
Mhm.
Reese in the book is like, it's okay, it's just your body's way of reacting to Feyre.
Mhm.
I was like, oh my gosh, like I had these same thoughts when I was going through like my experiences too. So she definitely inspired me to want to write more about this topic and to write my own books. But the other person is Lori Halsey Anderson. I think that's how you pronounce her name. She's the author of Speak. And she heavily inspired me wanting to write and wanting to be more open and vocal about, my experience and creating that platform where it's okay to share experiences like that and it's not a taboo thing.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So if do you see yourself talking about this at like conferences and stuff? Like if you were to go do a book tour, do you think you would touch more on that aspect along with it or just kind of just more focus like book wise or are you opening this up to like hey, this is a community for everyone that like can pull from?
I think honestly, it's a community for everyone. And I want this book to be something that, inspires the people that have spoken up or maybe the people that haven't even had a chance to use their voice. I want this book to be inspiring to them and to be impactful. And I want it to be something that sparks those conversations too, where people feel more comfortable just opening up and sharing what they've been through. Because the only way for us to become more of a community is to realize that there's things that we've all been through that
Mm.
we can connect on, and that everyone has a similar story in some sense.
Yeah.
But I think it's something that I would want to definitely touch on during a book tour. Of course, I would still want to talk more about the book, but I would not be opposed to talking about this topic as well if it was brought up.
Yeah, so the reason why I asked is because there are from a lot of conventions that I've seen of like where people will read their books where those conversations a lot of people do ask a lot of questions, and some of those questions can get on a very personal level. So I'm always curious when people say yes, I'm okay with talking about it.
Mhm.
I mean, because you're basically laying yourself out here for the world to see,
Yeah.
and I think that's awesome because it shows a level of vulnerability that most people just don't have.
Mhm.
Um, do you have I know you said you're hoping later this year, possibly with the release date. Do you have a specific date in mind for your book, or is it just kind of a we'll see when it gets here?
Um, it's more of a we'll see when it gets here. I was really hoping to be done by spring this year. My goal was actually to have it published in the spring because that was around the time that I was assaulted. And I wanted to do it as like a way of, getting closure, but also
Mhm.
like taking my voice back and just being like, you know what, I'm going to put my story out there. And I wanted it to be something to where like when I get it published, I can look back every year and instead of thinking about that time, think, man, I published a book and now this book is out here for like the world to read and for other people to connect on. I don't think it's going to be ready by springtime because I keep going back and editing things and adding things.
You got to do that when you're done.
Yeah, but I think it'll probably come out, I would say the end of summer, beginning of fall at the latest.
Well, so I was actually going to ask, since you do have like a symbolized moment for that, would you just make it a spring release for next year instead then? Would that be like a something that you'd be more interested in doing just so you can still keep that adding that closure to that chapter of your life for good and just
Yeah.
banking it on something new?
Yeah, that's something that I've thought about. Um, but I know I have a lot of people that are like, "I really wanna read it, I'm ready to read," and I'm like, "Okay, maybe I shouldn't postpone it out that far."
So you can also do you have people that you have set to do like beta reading for you? So that way those people can kind of like get a taste of the book and then also maybe help with the editing process because it sounds like you do the same thing I'm doing where you're going back and rereading it and going, oh guys, I need to just fix that right now and go, oh now I need to add more chapters and I'm not done, but I'm going back and re-editing because I'm in that phase right now. So I get that. But I would say if you have like a small group of friends that are like, I can do this, like let me read it for you, and then I mean, I think I sent you a copy of Realm of Wind and Rain when I was like
Mhm.
in the beta says. And honestly, the fact that you even took the time to read it and let me know like, hey, what you thought, it meant the world to me. So I'm like,
Mhm.
if you have like a small little group that you just want to like appease for now, they may give you like an outside look that, you're not seeing because
Yeah.
you're in it.
That's a good idea. I'll have to do that. I have talked to a few people that are willing to be readers ahead of time for me and help me edit.
Mhm.
Um, so I think I'm gonna do that. I think I'll reconnect with them and be like, "Here you go. Check
Yeah,
your email."
and I mean, honestly, so I think I tried not to annoy everybody because I know when I sent out my beta links to the few people that got it, I think maybe we had like 25 people reading the betas, and I was like, "Ooh, that's a lot of people." But I didn't give anybody the ending. And I had a few people get mad. They were like, "Well, where's the ending?" And I'm like, "No, no, no, that's gonna be a surprise. I don't want that part because I wanted that part of the story to stay a surprise to everybody, but I also wanted to stay true to what I wanted to write without having extra voices in. But I think something like that would actually benefit the most because I didn't know there was a difference between beta and ARC readers until I joined this community, and I was like, oh, okay. Well, now I see where I was messing up at, and I didn't do research when I did this. I kind of just jumped in head first and was like, okay, well, it's out there. Fly, little birdie, fly. Um, I know before we got on, we were talking, and I was asking, were you trying to go more traditional, or were you trying to go more indie? And you said you're possibly going more towards self-publishing.
Mhm.
So if you were to go for a traditional publishing company, who's your top? Like, who's the one you really want to hear from, or the one you really want to be with, if you were to go the traditional publishing route?
Um, Probably Atria Books. They've published a lot of like Colleen Hoover. I think they've done like Christina Lauren as well. Which those are some of my favorite authors too, but I feel like they're kind of in that same niche with what I'm trying to write.
Mhm.
So I'd love to get something published through them. I know that it takes a lot of time and effort to get your stuff across the table to them.
Yes.
Um, yeah, but it's something that I've thought about, and I definitely think it's a goal to work towards for sure.
So on your author goal board, is that like number one on the list of like that is my goal, like from that 5-year leaderboard? Where does that sit for you?
Um, I would say it's at the top of my board, and I would say a goal for within probably the next 2 years to try to get it out there.
Nice. See,
Mhm.
and I talk about the author boards, and for anyone that's listening or watching, they're not physical boards. It's like a mental list that we have that's like, okay, this is my goal that I want to get done within X amount of years. I want to get this goal done within X amount of years, and then this goal done within X amount of years. And I feel like I personally will say have more rejection letters in my email than my heart could handle. That's why I went self-publishing, was because I was like, okay, well, I don't think it's just ready to be picked up that way. And but I still have my first rejection letter, and I printed it. And that is my thing, is to not prove the people wrong, but that's my motivation to try to get this whole series out by myself. And it's hard. You don't really have a team behind you, and everything's out of pocket, but when you see your numbers and people buy them, it's satisfying because you did it yourself. Yeah,
Mhm.
you may have paid an editor to help out, or you had friends help you out instead, but you did that. And I feel like that's probably the most self-satisfying thing, is once you get it out there and see that first sale, and you're just
Yeah.
like, wow, one person wanted to read this. Yes. And if it goes up from there, it's just, oh sweet, there's more people that want to read this. All right.
Yep.
But now do you have like, do you see yourself more wanting to go through Barnes and Noble or through KDP? How have you looked into either one of them?
I feel like Barnes& and Noble would be my number 1,
Mhm.
also because I live at that store. I'm at that store, like, every week. I'm there every week, like, buying something or looking just to see what they have on the shelves. Um, but I think that that would be my number 1 for sure. I've always even when I was in high school and I was writing, it was always my dream to have something at Barnes& and Noble, to be able to walk in and just be like, "Yes, I wrote that. That's my book up there." So definitely think Barnes& and Noble would be my number 1.
All right. My dream was Borders, and we see how well that turned out, because Borders is no longer a thing. um but so with that, would you also do Nook as well, or do you just want to do straight physical copies of your book?
No, I definitely wanna do Nook. Definitely wanna make sure that you can also have a digital copy and it's not just physical. Because I know a lot of people have gravitated towards doing things like Kindle Unlimited and things
Hmm.
like that. So I wanna make it easily accessible for people.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I'm on the Kindle Unlimited train. I have my book on Kindle Unlimited, and honestly, tracking the pages that people have read has been kind of also like a woohoo moment for me. But so are you wanting to steer away from putting your stuff up anywhere else, or is it just because like you also have Books a Million too, which is the parent company to Second and Charles as well? I don't know if you're in there often either, but I looked into them, and they actually I was surprised because I follow Katie Roberts, and she actually has different versions of I think it's On Dark Waters. I think that's the name of the one. but it's her newest book, and it's their second newest book, but she has a version for Books a Million. She's got a version for Barnes and Nobles, Target, and all, and I'm just like, and I think even Amazon has its own like bonus chapters, or like something, every each
Okay.
one has something separate, something different that the others don't have. So like I just finished Butcher and Blackbird. Well, my book has the site, like this Skullduggery is the last chapter in the book, but it's a bonus on its own. But when I was listening to it through audiobook to help me get through it, that wasn't there. So
Mhm.
I don't know if that was just like a specific, because like my Kindle edition has it, my physical book has it, but the audiobook didn't.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, so maybe that the audiobook's a different version. Maybe there's, if I buy it through, well, or through Target, it'll have its own. Like, do you want to do like bonus chapters like that? Like to where it gives like just kind of like a side chapter in like for each area you put it out on, or just kind of what you see is what you get?
Um, I've thought about a bonus chapter. It's just a matter of like getting through the main story first. But I did think about a bonus chapter, or at least something that I want to just put at the end of every book, no matter where it's published.
Mhm.
Um, just to have it be like something like a little sweet treat. A nice little ending to the story per se. Um, I don't know. I'll have to give it more thought.
Now, do you have your own website where people can go and follow you and get updates that's not like TikTok or any social media?
So that's still a work in progress. Lately, TikTok and Instagram have been my two places that I've been posting the most updates. I'm still trying to finalize some things with the website, but I should have that probably within the next few weeks.
Nice.
Mhm.
Now I know some authors do like Patreon bonus chapters through that, or like sneak peek chapters through behind like a paywall. Is that something that you would want to do, or
I think right now it's more so just going to be whenever I publish the book, that's when you'll be able to read everything.
Mhm.
I have given thought to Patreon and doing something like that, but I don't know. I have to kind of work out all the details for that and see if that's something I want to pursue.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. I have a website, and I actually, because I don't know if you, before you started your authoring journey, if you signed up for any like PR promotions for other companies and whatnot, but I'm on the master list for it's Dark Knights 1001 and Blue Box Press, which is Jennifer Armentrout's publishing
Yep.
company, the ones that publish her. So I have an entire spot on my website that's strictly just all the promotion stuff that they send me, so I get that out, and then I have an author's corner as well that I post up, like people who I have on
Okay.
the podcast, people who I've read their book, and even though they don't know I'm spotlighting them on my website, they're getting spotlighted on my website because their stuff's amazing. And then I also I have a spot that I'm working on for up and coming authors. And when your stuff gets ready, and with your approval, I would like to actually have you spotlighted on that. So that way that gives you a little more view.
Yeah. I'd love that. I'd be honored.
So we've actually gone through a lot. Is there anything that you wanted to talk about on your own that you just kind of wanted to like put out there to the world?
Um, the only thing I will say is definitely for anyone that's listening, if you're not currently following my TikTok or Instagram, should definitely check it out. It's Jaida Lorelle, author. Krystal, I'm sure you're probably going to put those details.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be in there.
um, but definitely check it out because I have actually been posting some things that are more interactive. Um, I just recently posted on my TikTok asking for people to share their funny college stories as well, because I want to draw inspiration from other people's stories. And some of those are also going to be highlighted in my book. I'm going to draw some inspiration from that and maybe reference some of those stories. So definitely check out some of those posts because if you want to have maybe your story or funny things referenced in there, you'll have to make sure that you comment or stitch those videos so I can hear your stories.
See, I did see that, and I like that, and I'm just sitting
Mhm.
there going, "Oh, wait, I didn't go to college, so I don't have a story. I'm sorry." But I was
That
like,
Yep.
so okay, moving on into the world of other books, is there another book that you are interested that's coming out this year or that's on the horizon? Is there something you're looking forward to, a series you're waiting for to finish up or anything like that? Like, what are you doing right now?
Oh, that's a really good question. Um, well, I know Crescent City 3 is coming out this coming Tuesday, which I'm excited for. Um, I think the other thing that I'm looking forward to, I believe it comes out this year, is more Lore Olympus. I have been loving those graphic novels. I had been reading them on Webtoon, and I know
Mhm.
I technically could go on there and like see the stuff that hasn't been published yet, but I love having the physical copy in my hands.
So, I don't mean to cut you off, but have you noticed the difference between them?
The difference?
Oh, there's differences. So,
Really?
yeah, I have volume 1 upstairs. My daughter's stepmom, who has become my best friend over all of this, she bought me volume 1, and as I'm reading, I'm like, "Wait a minute. That's different." And I pulled up the webtoons, and sure enough, the translation is different. There are certain things that she softened up in the physical copies that were very harsh in the webtoons, but that got softened up as it made it into physical publication. So if you haven't noticed that little detail,
Okay.
I would check that out a little bit because yeah, that is one that I'm obsessed with too, and I actually been holding off reading it because I think it ends with the season that it's on now.
Really?
I think Rachel said that it is done after the end of, I think we're in season 5 now, something along those lines. So like 3 or 5, something like that. But she said that she's kind of done with it. She's kind of going to close that chapter, and I'm like, oh, I don't think I'm ready for this because I look forward to it every year. I'm
Yeah.
like, yes, coming back. But I think she said she's done after this. Now, do I know if that means she's gonna pick up with somebody else? Like maybe Artemis? Give us a whole story about her. That'd be nice, but yeah, sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off on that one. I just
No,
wanted to know
that's
if you've seen
okay.
that. Continue.
No, that's okay. Now I have something that I need to look at, with Webtoon and with the actual physical copies. I did not realize that.
So the graphics are still the same, like which a lot of people were surprised that she didn't update the physical graphics. But yeah, no, some of the words are very they're
Hmm.
slight changes, but if you've read it as many times as I have, you'd pick it up because I'm that
Yeah,
kind of person that when they pause or it's in between seasons, I go back to the beginning and reread it all over again because it's one that like if you don't keep rereading and going back over when it has such a long hiatus, you have a tendency to forget some things. But
yeah.
what do you say about the Flesh and Blood series?
See, that series I got away from a little bit. I have not kept up with it, unfortunately. I need to get back to it. Um, I don't know. I feel like I'm kind of torn because I feel like the first couple of books for From Blood and Ash were really
Mhm,
good, but then I felt like we got a lot of Poppy's inner monologue,
mhm.
and it started to kind of lose me. And I got a little
Yeah.
bit confused with the plot. I was like, I don't remember any of this in the first 2 books.
Yeah. I I'm right there with you. Visions of Blood and Ash comes out in April. It comes in a couple months,
That sounds right.
but it's not what I thought it was. I thought it was going to be the next book in the series after A Soul of Blood and Ash, which was, if you haven't read it or if you've stepped away, you might not remember, but it's basically what we all begged Stephanie Myers for with Twilight. We got just in the middle of the series. So instead of having like I was a big Twilight fan, I always wanted to know where Edward went in the first book. But we didn't get that until God, what, 3 years ago was when we got Midnight Sun.
Mhm.
And I noticed that as well. The details are different from the books. So she wrote Midnight Sun, and I don't know if I'm the only one that just picked this up or if I just am misunderstanding everything, but Twilight and Midnight Sun are different. There are small little things that she changed, like big details that were in Bella's world that she changed in Midnight Sun that followed the movie, not the book.
Okay.
And I'm
Interesting.
like, and it's like as an avid fan, which I mean, to be fair, I wasn't a fan of it to begin with. I was hogtied into the movie theater and was like, yeah, let's go, we're doing this. But after reading the books, I got into it, but it's different. So, and I don't know if that's just like a thing like that authors who are just trying to like kind of get some money back out of that fandom again. So they're just gonna throw out a book. But I actually DNF'd it
Mm,
midway through. And
yeah.
I'm not happy to say that, but because I try not to DNF a book, but there's some books it's like the bookmark's still in there. I'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
What about you? Do you have a book that you have just kind of you were excited about and then was just like, "Oh, I'm not what happened here?"
I feel like that was kind of me with Tracy Wolf with her Crave series.
Mhm.
Those books started off so amazing, really good. I still love the series. It actually got me back into reading after like a 5-year hiatus. Um, and I think it was, oh gosh, it was Court. It's up there on my shelf. I had to look back because I couldn't remember the title. It was Court, the 4th book in the series. I started reading it and I was like, I don't remember any of this stuff from the first 3 books. And I was like flipping back through the first 3 and I'm like, did I miss something? Something's not connecting. So I ended up getting like halfway through and I put the book down and it was a good probably 3 or 4 months before I picked it back up. And I was like, okay, I'm going to read a little bit more. And then I don't think I ever finished it. I think I just like spark notes the book on Google
Oh,
and I was like, someone just spoiled the end of it for me, please. Let me know what happens.
so did you read the because I see you have all 5, right?
Yeah.
Did the
So
5th one did you like that one better or
the 5th one was different. So just like you had mentioned where you were wondering where Edward went in the
Mhm.
Twilight books, um, something like that kind of happened in her series where 2 of the characters, I believe it was this yeah, it was the 2nd book. They ended up going somewhere for like 3 months, but no one knew exactly where. So the 4th book touched on that, and the entire book was like where they went for that 3 months, where they disappeared to, and kind of like their relationship evolving during that time.
Mhm.
Um, that I loved because those 2 characters, I absolutely adored them.
Yeah.
So I was excited for that. But the 4th book in the series was like one of those books where it was just a little strange because you're sitting there reading and you're like, I feel like I'm reading a whole different series right now.
Well, I mean, and sometimes that could be a good thing though, depending on yeah, the book itself. I mean, if you're really invested, sometimes I like to get other people's point of views. Um,
Mhm.
but then there's also if it's completely different, I think they should just make it like a spark off like what Vampire Diaries and the originals did.
Mhm.
Just okay, we're gonna drop these characters here. They're not gonna be in the books, but we're gonna drop them here and then just tangent off because
Yep.
I have the Vampire Diaries series as well, the physical books. And it's another one of those things that it's just like there's so many things that when books get turned into movies or TV series, I'm just like, I get leaving some stuff out for time's sake, but
Mhm.
don't change the characters that much, especially because I don't know, or did you ever watch Vampire Diaries?
So it's funny that you mention it. I have watched it before. I'm actually rewatching it, and I got my husband to watch it with me.
Nice.
So, and he's like, he's a huge Damon fan now. So we talk about Damon all the time. And we're actually, I think, on season 7. So we're
Hmm.
almost done. But it's funny that you mentioned it because I've heard there's so many, like, differences between the books and the actual TV series, which
Yeah.
makes me a little bit scared to, like, read the books if I ever want to.
Um, the one cheat thing that I'm gonna say is one of the only ones that it's not really much of a spoiler because the first book you pick up is Elena's face on the book, but she's a blue-haired blonde.
Interesting.
Elena and Caroline, their characters needed to be swapped because that is how it is in the book. Elena's character is Caroline Forbes to a T, where Elena is, and it's just like, so that was one thing that put me off a little bit when I started reading the book. So I actually did not finish the series. Plus, also, I apparently grabbed, there's a couple different series within the series. And there's one that's based on kitsunes. And I'm like, okay. But we never got to see that in the show. And I'm like, I'm all sad and depressed, like, "Oh, that's not fair. I like this stuff." But, actually, Twilight did it too. They gave us everybody else's backstory except for Alice's, but Alice got her backstory in the book, just the movies were
Mhm.
like, "Eh, nah, not important." And I'm just like, "But it was. It was important." And then okay, so do you have a worry about the ACOTAR books being turned into, uh, TV series?
I do. In a way, I kind of wish they wouldn't do it live action. I almost and it's gonna sound funny, but I almost wish that they would do, like, an anime series for it. I feel like the artwork and the music would do it more of a justice,
Mhm.
especially with how high fantasy it is. I feel like it's gonna be very hard for them, live action, to get the right CGI, to get the right actors and actresses. It's gonna be a tough one to live up to.
I'm right there with you on that one. Actually, I could honestly see it being a Ghibli film.
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but and I mean, I think it was either you or my friend Jess who was like, "Oh yeah, no, Avatar was slightly based off of Howl's Moving Castle," and I went,
It was.
"Yeah," and it
It
wasn't
was.
until you guys said that to me that I was like, "That makes so much sense." And like, I love that there's other things out there in the world that can inspire us to write stories that normally we're like, "Oh, no, it's already out there," but it's like, it's really not. Like, and I would actually love to see, like you were saying, the series done more animated style than live action, just because I do worry about, some of the scenes. Mainly, I worry about how they're gonna put the bone carver and Bryaxis into play,
Yeah.
because I don't know, you're just gonna have the guy standing in the middle of the library just screaming his head off? Like, are we gonna actually see something? Is it just gonna be, like, dark smoke? Like, hold up, what's gonna happen here?
Yeah, so
But
many questions.
out of the cast that I've seen as, like, the fan cast, I think I only really agree with, Cassian's pick. Other than that, I'm just like, I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know how I
Well,
feel about.
and the other thing too is, like, I've seen a lot of castings with Henry Cavill. I think that's how you pronounce his last name.
Mhm.
I love him, don't get me wrong, but I feel like him for Reese, or even, like, I've seen him cast as Reese, but I've also seen people doing, like, castings for Throne of Glass and casting him as Rowan. He's too old for those characters, at least in my opinion. When I pictured Reese, I pictured someone a little bit younger, like maybe late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Um, and then someone who had more like olive tone skin, a little bit like
Mhm.
darker complexion, um, with obviously the dark hair and everything, because I believe that's how he's described in the book.
Yeah.
But everything that's been posted for his fan casting, I'm just like, are you sure?
I
Because I'm
see.
not feeling it.
I saw one that had him cast as Azriel, and I'm
Really?
like, yeah, and I'm like,
Yeah.
why? Like,
I guess maybe it's because people are still on, like, The Witcher.
I think it's also the fact that he's a purist to the original, or the original workings. So
Yeah.
like with Witcher, he was such a purist with that, that it made sense. And I mean, if I'm fan casting my own book, I want somebody that's a fan of the book, like
Mhm.
somebody that wants to see it go from page to screen without so many alterations. And
Yep.
I mean, I read that the actor was put on pause for a bit because of writer discrepancies, and then all of a sudden, Moss is moving back over here to the East Coast, back to I think it's New York, because I mean she's local to us too in a way, because she's originally from Pennsylvania. She's not
Mhm.
that far from where we're at, and well, at least where she was born. But it's just interesting because it's just like, okay, was it discrepancy with that she didn't like what they were doing? Were they changing the series so much? Um, or was it just that people weren't seeing eye to eye on how things should be done?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a running joke in my book. For those of you that haven't read ACOTAR and you have no idea who Lucian is, you won't understand this. But for those of you that do know who Lucian is, you'll understand when you have a character and you just say, "Oh no, I Lucianed him." I have one character that as the first book came out and my sister and my friend are reading the second book, they're like, "No, no, 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 you're Lucianing him. Don't Lucian him. Don't Lucian him." And I'm like, shit, I did. But I mean, we have those characters that is like we have our go-to books, our go-to comforts, and then we
Mhm.
find ourselves not not copying the characters, but taking tones from those characters and putting them into our own works and going like, okay. But then when somebody describes your characters from another character, you're like, oh, that's not the character I wanted them to think about when they read my guy. But at least I haven't gotten a Tamlin yet. Nobody said, "Oh, that's a Tamlin." Nah, we're good. I don't think anyone's hated in my book like that.
That's good.
But, so we are actually we're out of time for today. So, I wanna say thank you so much again for coming on and speaking with me. Um, you wanna give a shout out real quick to anybody?
Um, well, thank you for having me. I
Of course.
appreciate it. It was a lot of fun catching up. Um, I guess just shout out to all of my friends out there that have been supporting me through this and the encouraging messages that you guys have been sending to me. It's been very helpful, especially when I hit my writer's block. Um, and to all of those friends too who stay up late with me, reading snippets, telling me their thoughts, giving me feedback, and telling me to stay true to myself and to the characters too. I really appreciate it.
Yay. So everybody, you can follow Jaida Lorelle at Jaida Lorelle author on Instagram and TikTok. As
Mhm.
soon as she has anything up about her website, I will post that on my website. So that way everybody else can just kind of like tag over from there and follow from there. But as of that, we're all good, everybody. Have a great day and stay safe.
Thank you.